I want to start this video by saying that I am in no way, shape, or form sponsored by Aim Labs or Riot, but if one of you are watching, then feel free to hit me up. Also, don't forget to subscribe if you're new here and leave a like if you enjoy the video. I put a lot of time and energy into this and I'm really proud of the outcome, so I'd appreciate the support. The best way to start this adventure is by giving a little bit of backstory of who I am and what I do. I historically am known more for playing guitar, speedrunning platformers, and retro gaming. I've had little to no experience playing any shooters outside of playing casually or competing on game battles as a teenager in games such as Rainbow Six Vegas 2, Call of Duty 4, and the Halo series. Note, all of which were on console, so I'm more or less just an average/casual person and gamer. In recent years, I've spent a lot of time watching people such as Shroud, Tens, Simple, Skadoodle, etc. all playing shooters, and I would fantasize about playing at that level, but always came to the conclusion that I just didn't have the time to learn, or I was simply too old. I always came across videos asking the exact same question as this one: do aim trainers really work? I watched as many of them as I possibly could, but they all came from the perspective of someone who plays FPS on PC regularly and not a completely average person with adult responsibilities and time. No offense, kiddos. When VALORANT was released, I was extremely excited because I got a key for the closed beta, and I figured this was my opportunity to get a foot in the door to be above the rest. I quickly learned this was simply not the case. Oh, good. During the heat of the pandemic, I found myself working so much that I simply was not able to play video games. Then, after about a year, I had some life-changing events that forced me to have much more free time, and I was finally able to grind. Even though I currently own other aim trainers, I decided to use Aim Labs simply because I preferred the user interface and my primary game was going to be VALORANT, so I could actually compare my scores to the professionals. Both Tens and Ethos, who play VALORANT at a high level, had playlists already, and I could use those to warm up and compare my stats to theirs, so I thought this was the best option. In scenarios such as Grid Shot, Tens is known for averaging 90,000 plus, so that was kind of one of the targets. I'm going to be breaking this down and rating each week objectively at the end of each week. I'm going to be rating them based on these 6 categories: my score, my accuracy, my tracking, my speed, the averages, and then an overall rating, again while comparing myself to the professionals. Week 1, I established my plan for how I'm going to practice over the next 30 days. I was going to start with Ethos playlist because I felt like it had a natural progression for warming up, and then I was going to do the Tens routine so I can evaluate my progress. I was going to have 2 attempts with each scenario, and I would have to accept my score without resets unless something really strange happens, like I'm holding the mouse in a weird angle or I'm not prepared for the scenario because I wasn't paying attention and thought I was starting another one. It's odd, but it happens. For week 1, my scores, I would rate it a 2 out of 5. My base scores were fairly average, but started improving dramatically after just a day or two. I learned pretty quickly that I'm decent at simply clicking dots, but I still had a fairly slow hand, and I still didn't have all the settings matched between both games, but we'll get into that in a little bit. Some notable PBs that I have been on screen. First week was a good baseline for the progress because my averages were pretty average. Accuracy. I would rate my accuracy a 4 out of 5. My accuracy always sat right around 95% or higher, but I tried to look at this more like learning an instrument and less like playing a video game. I made sure to make my movements a little bit more deliberate, and accuracy was much more important to me than speed at the moment. I knew speed would come with time. Tracking. I would rate my tracking 1 out of 5. My tracking started pretty bad. I couldn't exactly take things slow with a moving target, and I especially couldn't take my time while the other person is trying to shoot me. I just assumed this would improve over time when my brain started to pick up more information and learn to process the information a little bit faster. I would rate my speed a 1.5 out of 5. My speed is fairly slow. I have a tendency to spend a lot of time recognizing which direction I should move instead of simply moving to the target. On day 5, I learned that my EDPI in Aim Labs was 370, while VALORANT's was 400. This screwed me up quite a bit in game because I was starting to tilt based on the fact that I was overshooting targets and missing shots I know I would have landed. This was quickly resolved, and day 5 was also the day that I decided to lower my EDPI to 360 instead of 370 because my 360 degree movement just felt more comfortable with my mousepad space. After day 5, I started to level off for the week and saw larger score averages but very few personal best scores. My averages for week 1, I would rate them a 2 out of 5. My averages are going to be on screen again, but just note that some of these scores overlap because of how the playlists and scenarios work. So with that being said, they're based more on my state of being warm and not necessarily my proficiency. Overall, I'd say I'm sitting around a 2 out of 5 in terms of scores on week 1. I'm fairly average after a full week of practicing only an hour a day, but I'm regularly seeing my scores, accuracy, and speed increasing. In game, I've been much more confident in consistently top fragging in the majority of my games, but the losses seem to be with inconsistencies in my game sense more than with my aim. And we're silver. Oh! Bronze 3! No! No! Week 2. In terms of scores, I would rate my scores a 2.5 out of 5. This week, I saw significant improvements at every single scenario. I noticed drastic improvements with my tracking and my flick shots. My speed was also improving at a rate that I wasn't expecting. I was still sitting slightly above average in the majority of the tasks, but I was definitely getting more comfortable using a mouse and keyboard, as well as controlling my aiming and my decision making. My week 2 accuracy, I would rate it a 4 out of 5. My accuracy remained around 95% in almost every task, but my speed was increasing significantly. For tracking, I would rate it 3 out of 5. I saw a massive improvement over the course of the 2 weeks. I went from an average of 50k in tracking scenarios to closer to 65k. This definitely impressed me, especially when watching back the footage. My speed for the week went up again. I would rate it a 2.5 out of 5. My speed saw pretty significant increases after just 2 weeks. My scores kept climbing as I saw my reaction time increase to processing the information on screen as well as in game. My averages for the week, I would rate them as a 3 out of 5. Again, all of my averages will be on screen. As you can see, I saw pretty large bumps in almost every scenario in terms of my averages. Overall, I'm noticing my aim is getting much faster while in game. I'm able to keep my crosshair right around head level while predicting the location of enemies. I'm also able to make decisions faster because I don't have to focus nearly as much of my attention on my aim, and I can focus more of my mind power specifically on the game.
Blinding.
One enemy remaining.
Okay.
Spike.
I don't really have a lot of notes for this week aside from the ones previously mentioned. I was getting faster, but so far there hasn't been much progress in terms of the game. Week 3. My scores for the week will be on screen, but I would rate them a solid 3 out of 5. This week I tried to push the limits of my speed a little bit further because I noticed that my accuracy and speed were starting to level out to a point where I was seeing little to no improvement overall, but my scores were still consistently improving. Accuracy for this week dropped to a 3 out of 5. Since I was trying to focus more energy on speeding up my reaction times and pushing my accuracy faster and faster, I noticed my normal around 95% average actually started to drop to around 80% while my speed was actually climbing. Tracking is the skill that I've noticed is improving the fastest and most steady out of all the disciplines. I would currently rate my tracking a 3.5 out of 5. I'm starting to see more and more scores that are higher than average, and I'm actually starting to lock onto the target much faster than I could in previous week. I would rate my speed for week 3 at 3.5 out of 5. This is where I started to notice that I was getting better and better at first shot accuracy and assessing the target. I consistently started to see scores over 100,000 in scenarios such as motion shot, where I was only seeing averages around 75,000 in week 1. Scenarios such as grid shot that are solely focused on speed also saw an average of almost 20,000 points over the first week. My average scores for week 3 are 3.5 out of 5. My averages are currently on the screen, and for the most part, I've leveled out in terms of scores from week 2. This week I noticed the least amount of change in terms of all my scores. There were a few notable score and skill improvements, but for the most part, I had mostly leveled out. In week 3, I started to notice that I would rely too much on my initial aim while in game, and I noticed that I would actually perform much worse on average. I would start an engagement by immediately clicking on the head, but then overestimate the recoil and end up shooting the chest or legs instead of shooting the head, which in turn resulted in extremely high assist rates. At the end of the week, I noticed that my scores also started to drop or simply level out with little to no improvement. This started to frustrate me quite a bit because I felt like I was more comfortable using a mouse and keyboard than I ever have been before, but I wasn't really seeing it in terms of the scores. I would actually associate this quote-unquote leveling out as something I refer to as the plateau, and this happens in pretty much any skill that you're trying to learn, but that is a different video entirely. My overall progress for week 3, I would rate it a 2.5 out of 5. There hasn't been a lot of improvement either in-game or in the trainer. If anything, I'm seeing less consistency while in Valorant, but staying really consistent while in the trainer. Week 4. Week 4 was a massive test of consistency for me. I was out of town with my family for the week, so I had to bring my computer with me and practice in a very different computer chair and a very different computer desk without the comfort of being able to listen to music or eliminate distractions. I also didn't have a stable internet connection, so I wasn't able to play Valorant, but this might have actually been a well-needed mental break from the situation. Scores for week 4 were definitely strange for me, and I would rate my final scores around a 4 out of 5. Since the previous week ended with me feeling frustrated by the plateau, I felt like the new conditions were going to put me out of my flow even more, but this simply wasn't the case. I actually saw a fairly large increase in the majority of the tasks and was fairly consistently getting over 100,000 in scenarios such as motion track. My end goal for motion track was close to 120,000, so I feel like with a little bit more practice, I could consistently reach my goals in the trainer. My accuracy is back up to a 4 out of 5. After spending the previous week focusing largely on my speed, I noticed that my accuracy actually started to match my speed by week 4. I would rate my tracking now at a 4 out of 5. My tracking has increased significantly since week 1, and I'm actually much more capable of being able to snap to and lock onto a target. This is a skill that was easily the most difficult for me, but by the end of week 4, I was averaging well beyond my expectations and was continuing to see improvement every single day. My speed has gone up to a 4 out of 5. The speed tasks are some of my favorites, and as I mentioned previously, being able to consistently get over 100,000 in scenarios such as motion track was incredibly satisfying, just to see how fast I was able to react to a moving target. Averages are still at a 3.5 out of 5. My averages from the week are currently on screen, and I saw a little bit of improvement as a whole, but there were some tasks where I definitely just leveled out. All in all, I'd say that I'm getting slightly above average in terms of the majority of the skills, but I'm not specifically trying to get good at aim trainers. I'm trying to improve at shooters as a whole. Overall, I would rate my improvement at a 3.5 out of 5. I definitely saw progress both in-game as well as in the trainer, and I felt much more confident with my aim and my other abilities. Conclusion. Now we're brought back to the ultimate question at hand. Do aim trainers really work? After spending 30 hours over the last 30 days grinding out scenarios and analyzing my footage, I will start by having you compare my footage side by side. On the left is a personal best from week 1, on the right is a personal best from week 4. Looking at the footage, I have to admit that aim trainers definitely work at what they are meant to do. I don't think that anyone believes that grinding for hours and hours in aim trainers is going to turn you into the next Shroud or will give you the ability to jump into any game and immediately be the highest rank possible, but I also do not think that aim trainers are intended to do any of that. Aim trainers won't make you an instant god at any shooters, but they will definitely allow you to practice aiming at a much higher rate than learning in the traditional sense by simply playing the game alone. An example, in a typical game of Valorant, if you top frag, solo carry, or whatever, and you go 30 and 10 in 13 rounds, then you are only practicing your aim about once every minute on average. Whereas when you're using an aim trainer, you can actually practice constantly the entire time that you are playing. There isn't a single aim trainer that will give you the game sense necessary to climb in any game, but they will 100% help you practice the fundamentals so you can spend more time learning the game itself. This way, you can focus more time on positioning, movement, crosshair placement, map knowledge, utility usage, or whatever, instead of worrying about whether or not you're able to click heads on the screen. Anything that will remove elements that you have to think about while playing the game will help you improve at the game, and being able to aim confidently will definitely help you in the long run. With all of that being said, I am extremely happy with the results of this test, and I will definitely continue using aim trainers, simply because for me, there's something therapeutic about clicking some dots on a screen. It isn't exactly for everyone, but for me, it's a fun way to warm up my body and my mind. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope I was able to help you learn something new about aim trainers. Again, if you enjoyed this video, then please remember to like and subscribe, because this video took me a really long time to make, and I put a lot of work and effort into it. Also, I do stream almost every single day over on Twitch, so be sure to follow me over there so you can see my progress in the future. I really do appreciate your time, and have a wonderful day. Not because I told you to, but because you should.